The winter of 1876 came to Arizona territory like a vengeful spirit. Snow fell thick and merciless across Mogollon Rim, transforming the familiar pines into ghostly sentinels. The blizzard had teeth. It bit through wool and leather, through skin and bone, all the way down to the soul. Aida's knees hit the frozen ground. She was done. Finished. Her body had carried her through 3 towns, through 36 rejections, through 70 miles of pure survival. But now, kneeling in snow that reached her waist, she felt the last ember of hope flicker and die. Behind her, 6 children stood in a ragged line. 6 beautiful, terrified children. Isaiah, 13 years old, carried little Siki on his back. Nalen held 8-year-old Kai's hand so tight the boy whimpered. The twins, Matto and Nita, clung to each other with the desperation of those too young to understand death, but old enough to feel its approach. And in Aida's arms, wrapped in threadbare blankets, baby Alo had stopped crying. That silence was the most terrifying sound she'd ever heard. Siki's voice cut through the howling wind, small and broken. "Mama, why doesn't anybody want us?" The question landed like a knife between Aida's ribs. She closed her eyes, feeling tears freeze on her cheeks. How could she answer? How could she explain to a 6-year-old child that the world measured worth in skin color, that love came with conditions, that compassion had limits? 3 days earlier, they'd stood before the boarding house in Prescott. The woman who answered wore a clean apron and a cleaner conscience. She'd looked at Aida's brown skin, at the children's mixed features, and her face had closed like a fist. "No Indians. I don't care if your children are half white. Get off my property." The door had slammed. Isaiah's fist had hit the wall, rage boiling over in a 13-year-old body that didn't know what else to do with injustice. Aida had pulled him away, her voice steady despite the screaming inside her skull. "We keep moving." They'd tried Jerome next. The general store owner, a severe woman named Abigail Porter, had counted the children with narrowed eyes. 6 mouths to feed? In winter? She'd shaken her head. "My son died in an Apache raid 5 years ago. You expect me to feed Apache brats?" "They're half white, ma'am. Their father was Thomas Brennan. He ran the trading post near Camp Verde." "I don't care whose bastards they are. Get out." Little Siki had started crying then, and Nalen had scooped her up, whispering comfort in a mix of English and Apache that broke Aida's heart. These children shouldn't have to be this strong. They should be playing, learning, laughing, not standing in the cold while strangers measured their worthiness to exist. Camp Verde had been their last hope. The army post surely would have resources, compassion, something. But the sergeant on duty had taken one look at them and shaken his head. Forts for soldiers, not squaw women with half-breeds. Isaiah had lunged. Aida caught him just in time, her hands iron on his shoulders. "No, we walk away." "But Mama, he can't just call us that. Pa was white. We have rights." She'd pulled him close, her lips against his ear. "Your rights died with your father. Out here we have only what people choose to give us, and they choose to give us nothing." Now, kneeling in the snow, Aida understood that even nothing was too generous. The world didn't just refuse them, it wanted them erased, gone, dead and frozen and forgotten. "Mama?" Nalen's voice trembled. "Mama, I can't feel my feet." Aida tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. She'd pushed too far, asked too much of a body that had given birth 7 times, survived 2 years as a widow, walked 70 miles in 3 days. She was Apache. She was strong. But she was also human, and humans had limits. "Get up." She whispered the words to herself, a prayer, a command. "Get up, get up, get up." Her body refused. Siki slid off Isaiah's back, stumbling through snow to her mother. Those small hands, brown and beautiful, tugged at Aida's sleeve. "Mama, you said we can't stop. You said if you fall, we all fall." The child's words were an echo of Aida's own, spoken just yesterday when Kai had wanted to rest. Now they became an accusation, a mirror showing her own failure. "I can't, baby. Mama can't." The wind howled. Baby Alo's silence grew heavier, and Aida felt the cold seeping deeper, past skin, past bone, into whatever spark kept a person alive. This is how it ends, she thought. Not with violence, not with drama. Just a woman and 6 children freezing to death because the world decided they didn't matter. "Ma'am." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, deep, rough from disuse. Carried on wind that should have scattered it. Aida's head snapped up. A figure emerged from the white void, tall, broad-shouldered, moving through snow that would have stopped a lesser man. He wore buckskin and fur, layers of animal hide that made him look more bear than human. A rifle hung across his back. Long dark hair, pulled back and tied, whipped in the wind. And his face, what she could see of it beneath the heavy beard, was weathered like mountain stone. He stopped 10 feet away, raised his hand slowly, palms out. The gesture of someone who understood fear, who knew that desperate people made dangerous choices. "Not here to hurt you." Aida's hand found the knife at her belt. Even freezing, even defeated, she was still a mother. Still Apache. Still capable of defending her children with whatever breath remained. "Stay back." The man's winter blue eyes moved past her, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in those eyes. Recognition, maybe, or memory. "How many children you got?" 6. The word came out as a growl. "You alone?" "Yes." "Towns turn you away?" How did he know? Aida didn't answer. Didn't owe this stranger her story, her pain, her humiliation. The man crouched down, slow and careful, like approaching a wounded animal, which, she supposed, was exactly what she was. "My name's Ezekiel Hartwell. Most folks call me Zeke. I got a cabin about a half-mile north." He paused, letting that information settle. "It's warm. There's food. You and your children can shelter there." A trap. It had to be a trap. White men didn't help Apache women. White men took what they wanted and left wreckage behind. Aida had learned that lesson with her own husband's brother, with Caleb's crude suggestions 3 days after Thomas's funeral, with his threats when she'd refused. "What do you want?" "To help." "Nobody helps for free." True enough. Zeke's voice remained level, neither defensive nor aggressive. "But sometimes the cost is just letting someone help. No other price." Isaiah stepped forward, placing himself between the stranger and his mother. The boy was 13, tall for his age, with Thomas's blue eyes in Aida's brown face. He'd been forced to grow up too fast, to become the man of the family when he should still be learning to become one. "We don't need charity from white men." Zeke's gaze shifted to Isaiah. He nodded once, a gesture of respect. "That's a brave stance, boy. Your mother raised you right." He straightened to his full height, 6'2" of muscle and survival. "But pride's a luxury in a blizzard. Your baby brother there, he's stopped crying. You know what that means?" Isaiah's jaw tightened. He knew. They all knew. "Hypothermia. Maybe 20 minutes before it's too late." Zeke's voice remained matter-of-fact, neither cruel nor pitying, simply stating truth. "So here's what I'm offering. Shelter, food, warmth. No cost except you letting me help. After the storm passes, you're free to leave, free to stay, free to make your own choice. But right now, you're freezing to death. And I can't stand here and watch that happen." "Why?" Aida's voice cracked. "Why do you care what happens to us?" The question hung in the frozen air. Zeke's expression, what she could see of it, shifted. Pain flickered across those winter eyes, there and gone so quick she might have imagined it. "Because 5 years ago, my wife needed help. She was Cherokee, sick with fever. I rode to town for a doctor." His voice went flat, empty. He saw she wasn't white. Refused to come. By the time I got back, she was dead. Our daughter, too. The words landed like stones. Aida saw the truth in his eyes, the weight of regret that bent even the strongest backs. "I couldn't save them. Maybe I can save you." The wind screamed. Baby Alo remained silent. Nalin swayed on her feet, lips blue. The twins had stopped shivering, which was worse than if they were still shaking, and Aida felt her own consciousness starting to blur at the edges. She looked at her children. At Isaiah, trying so hard to be a man. At Nalin, who'd held the family together through 2 years of grief. At Kai, who still believed the world might be kind. At Siki, who'd asked the question that had no good answer. At the twins, who deserved to grow old enough to develop separate personalities. At baby Alo, who might never learn to walk. "If you're lying," she said, each word costing effort, "if you hurt them, I will kill you. I don't care how big you are. I don't care if I'm dying. I will find the strength to end you." Zeke met her eyes, held her gaze without flinching. "If I hurt them, I hope you do." He extended his hand. Aida stared at that outstretched palm, calloused from work, scarred from survival, steady despite the storm. It was the steadiness that decided her. Liars trembled, truth stood firm. She reached up. Her hand disappeared into his, swallowed by fingers that could crush or cradle. He pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness, as if she were made of glass. "Isaiah, you help your mother. I'll carry the little ones." Without waiting for permission, Zeke scooped up baby Alo with one arm and Siki with the other. Both children should have protested, should have screamed stranger danger. Instead, they burrowed into his fur coat like animals seeking warmth. "Half-mile," he said. "Stay close. Stay together." They walked into the storm. The cabin materialized slowly, appearing piece by piece through the white curtain. First the fence posts, dark sentinels marking boundaries. Then the barn, a hulking shadow promising livestock and hay. Finally the cabin itself, built from pine logs, weathered but solid, with smoke curling from a stone chimney. Zeke pushed open the door. Heat rushed out, hitting them like a physical force. "Inside, all of you. Boots by the door, coats on the hooks." The children stumbled in, drawn to the fireplace like moths to flame. The cabin was larger than expected, a single great room with a sleeping loft above, everything built by hand with the precision of someone who understood that shoddy work meant death in the wilderness. Furs hung on the walls, bear and elk and wolf, carefully cured. Traps and snowshoes lined one corner. A rough-hewn table dominated the center. And on the mantel above the fireplace, a small wooden carving caught Aida's eye. A Cherokee woman holding a child. The figures were simple, but the love carved into them was anything but. Zeke moved to the cupboard with the efficiency of someone who'd lived alone too long. He pulled out dried venison, pemmican, cornmeal, honey, set them on the table without ceremony or flourish. "Eat." The children looked at Aida. She nodded once. They fell on the food like wolves, stuffing their mouths, barely chewing. Watching them, Aida felt her throat close. When had they last eaten a real meal? When had they last felt safe enough to eat without watching the door? Zeke pulled down thick blankets from a shelf, wool and fur, heavy and warm. He wrapped one around Aida and Alo together. "Baby needs skin-to-skin warmth. You'll need to remove your wet shirt. Hold him against your chest under the blanket." Aida stiffened. "I'll turn around." He did so immediately, facing the fire. "Your modesty's safe. Your baby's life isn't." She hesitated only a second before doing as instructed. The baby's skin against hers was cold as death. She held him close, willing her own warmth into his tiny body, praying to spirits both Apache and Christian that it wasn't too late. From across the room, Kai's voice piped up with the fearlessness of childhood. "Mister, you got a lot of hair on your face." Zeke turned back around, and for the first time, one corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Been growing it 5 years. Why? Keeps my face warm. Can I touch it? A pause. Then Zeke knelt down, bringing himself to the child's level. Go ahead. Kai reached out tentatively, fingers brushing the thick black beard. His eyes went wide. It's soft. The twins, Matto and Nita, crawled over. 4-year-olds knew no boundaries, had no fear. They patted Zeke's beard like it was a pet, giggling when it tickled their palms. Siki, braver now with food in her belly, declared solemnly, "You look like a bear." Been called worse? Even Isaiah, standing guard in the corner, cracked something that might have been a smile. Just for a second. Then his face closed again, remembering that this stranger might still be dangerous, that trust was a luxury they couldn't afford. But Aida, watching this mountain man kneel patiently while 3 children investigated his facial hair, felt something shift in her chest. Men who hurt children didn't let them touch, didn't lower themselves to their level, didn't smile, even that barely there smile, at their innocent questions. Maybe this one was different. Nalen's soft voice broke the moment. Is that your wife? The 11-year-old pointed at the carving on the mantel. Zeke's expression shifted, the almost smile vanishing. Was, Morning Star, and our daughter, Little Fawn. Where are they now? Gone. Fever took them both. I'm sorry. Zeke reached up, fingers brushing the wooden figures with a gentleness that belied his size. Me too, little one. Me too. Night fell. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cabin, warmth slowly returned to frozen limbs. Aida changed baby Alo into dry clothes Zeke provided, too big, but better than the soaked rags he'd been wearing. The baby's color improved. His eyes opened. He made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a question. Shh. Aida rocked him. You're safe now. We're all safe. But were they? She glanced at Zeke, who was building up the fire, his movements practiced and precise. What did she really know about this man? That he'd lived with a Cherokee wife? That he'd lost her? That he chose to help strangers in a storm? But men could wear kindness like a mask. She'd learned that from Caleb. As if sensing her thoughts, Zeke spoke without turning around. There's a loft upstairs, big enough for all of you. I'll sleep down here by the fire. That's your bed. I've slept in worse places. We can't take your bed. Now he turned, those winter blue eyes meeting hers directly. Yes, you can, because I'm offering it, and because those children need real rest, not exhausted collapse. He walked to the door, opened it, and before Aida could ask what he was doing, he removed his rifle from the wall and threw it out into the snow. There, I'm unarmed now. You've got your knife. Your boy looks like he can handle himself if needed. He nodded toward Isaiah. If I try anything at all, you defend yourselves. But I won't. I'm giving you my word, which is the only currency that matters up here. Aida stared at him. White men didn't disarm themselves for Apache women. White men didn't offer help without hidden costs. White men didn't kneel in the snow and speak of honor and promises. But then again, Ezekiel Hartwell wasn't like any white man she'd met. Thank you, she whispered, for the food, the shelter, the... No thanks needed. Just get some rest. She gathered the children and climbed to the loft. The space was filled with furs and blankets, more wealth than she'd seen in 2 years. She made beds for all of them, tucking each child in with the care of someone who'd nearly lost everything. Isaiah was last. He lay down but didn't close his eyes. Ma, I don't trust him. Neither do I. Not completely. What if he's like Uncle Caleb? What if he waits until we're asleep and then he tries to... Then we fight. But tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, we can worry about tomorrow. You think we can stay? Aida looked at her oldest son, this boy trying so hard to be a man. I don't know, baby. I don't know anything anymore except we're alive. And for tonight, That's enough. She lay down between Siki and baby Alo, one arm around each. Through the gaps in the loft floor, she could see Zeke below, sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. He wasn't sleeping. Was he standing guard? Or just unable to rest, haunted by ghosts only he could see? The carving on the mantel caught the firelight. Morning Star and Little Fawn, frozen forever in wood, watching over a man who couldn't save them, but might save others. Aida's eyes grew heavy. For the first time in 3 days, in 3 towns, in 70 frozen miles, she felt her body relax. Not safe. Not yet. But safer. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Siki's question, "Why doesn't anybody want us?" Maybe, just maybe, they'd found someone who did. Morning came with the smell of cooking meat. Aida woke disoriented, warm for the first time in days, surrounded by the soft breathing of her children. For one blissful moment she forgot where they were. Then memory crashed back. The storm, the stranger, the cabin. She sat up quickly, checking each child, all breathing, all with color in their cheeks. Baby Alo slept peacefully against Nalan, who'd taken him in the night when he fussed. Isaiah was gone. Panic spiked through her chest. She climbed down the ladder to find her oldest son sitting at the table with Zeke, both of them eating in silence. The tension between them was visible, 2 males sizing each other up across cornmeal mush and fried venison. Zeke glanced up as she approached. "Coffee's hot if you want it. Made extra for the boy." Isaiah looked at his mother, a question in those blue eyes inherited from his father. She nodded permission. The simple gesture felt monumental. She was allowing her son to break bread with a stranger, trusting, even fractionally, that this mountain man meant them no harm. "The storm passed," Zeke said, spooning honey into his mush. "But there's another front coming tonight, bigger than yesterday. You're welcome to stay through it. We've imposed enough. Wasn't an imposition, was an offer. There's a difference." Aida poured coffee into a tin cup, the steam rising like spirits into the cold morning air. Through the window she could see endless white, beautiful and deadly, the way so many things in this territory were. "Mr. Hartwell, we need to talk about payment. We have nothing now, but when we return to our land, there are goods we can trade. Furs, herbs, crafted items that—" "Stop." His voice was gentle but firm. "This isn't a transaction. This is neighbors helping neighbors. We're not neighbors. We just met. Then call it strangers helping strangers, or humans helping humans. Pick whatever name makes you comfortable, but I'm not taking payment for basic decency." Isaiah spoke up, voice tight with the anger that had lived in him since Thomas died. "Nothing's free. Men always want something." Zeke set down his spoon, looked at the boy with those steady blue eyes that saw too much. "You're right. Men usually do." He paused. "What I want is for you and your family to survive this winter. That's the sum total of my demands. Room and board in exchange for you not dying. Seems like a fair trade to me." Before Isaiah could respond, Siki came tumbling down the ladder, followed by the twins. The children's eyes went huge at the sight of food. Real food. Hot food. Food that nobody was going to snatch away or make them beg for. "Can we eat?" Siki whispered, as if speaking too loud might make it all disappear. "Food's there to be eaten, little bird." Zeke ladled mush into wooden bowls. "No permission needed in this house. You're hungry, you eat." The children fell on breakfast with the intensity of those who'd known real starvation. Aida watched them, her throat tight. When had eating become something they had to ask permission for? When had basic kindness become so rare they couldn't recognize it? Nalan climbed down last, carrying baby Alo. The girl was burning with fever, her skin flushed, eyes glassy. "Mama, I don't feel good." Aida was across the room in an instant, pressing her hand to Nalan's forehead. "Too hot. Much too hot. Zeke, I need hot water. Now." He didn't ask questions, just moved. Within minutes, a pot was boiling on the fire. Aida dug through the small medicine bundle she'd managed to carry from their old home. Willow bark, sage, yucca root, the same herbs her grandmother had taught her, the same knowledge passed down through generations of Apache healers. She crushed the willow bark, made tea, held it to Nolan's lips. "Drink, baby, all of it." Zeke watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. When Aida began making a sage steam, pressing wet cloths to Nalan's forehead and wrists, he moved closer. "Apache medicine?" "My grandmother's, my mother's, mine." She didn't look up from her daughter. "These mountains have everything we need, if you know where to look. Your people know healing. We know survival. Same thing, different name." Zeke knelt beside her, studying the herbs spread on the table. "Would you teach me?" Aida's hands stilled. She looked at him, searching for mockery, for condescension, found only genuine curiosity. "You want to learn from an Apache?" "I learned from a Cherokee. Morning Star taught me to read the forest, honor the spirits, use what the land provides." His voice went soft with memory. "Each tribe has wisdom. I'd be honored to learn yours." Something in Aida's chest cracked open. Not love. Not yet. But the first tentative shoot of respect, pushing through frozen ground toward light. The willow bark, it brings down fever. Sage cleanses. Yucca root for pain and inflammation. She held up each plant as she spoke. But you have to harvest at the right time, prepare correctly, or they're useless. Worse than useless, they can harm. Then teach me right. For the next hour, while Nolan drifted in feverish sleep, Aida taught. And Zeke learned with the focus of a man who understood that knowledge meant survival. Isaiah watched from the corner, his anger warring with something that looked dangerously like hope. By afternoon, Nolan's fever had broken. The girl slept peacefully, color returning to her cheeks. Aida finally allowed herself to breathe, to step outside into air so cold it hurt to inhale. Zeke was chopping wood with the methodical rhythm of someone who'd done this task 10,000 times. Each swing of the axe was precise, powerful, no wasted motion. He'd removed his heavy coat despite the cold, and Aida could see the muscles in his back and shoulders working beneath the buckskin shirt. Isaiah appeared beside her, silent as smoke. "He's strong." "Yes." "You think we can trust him?" Aida watched Zeke work, this bear of a man who'd thrown away his rifle, who'd learned Cherokee healing, who'd lost everything, and somehow found the strength to help others. "I think he's earned a chance to prove himself trustworthy. That's all anyone can ask." Isaiah nodded slowly. Then, before Aida could stop him, he walked across the clearing. "Mr. Hartwell, sir." Zeke paused mid-swing, turned. "Just Zeke." "Zeke, I want to help. With the wood. With whatever needs doing. You know how to split wood?" "My pa taught me." Something passed between them, man to man, even though one was fully grown and the other still becoming. "Then show me." Zeke handed over the axe. Isaiah took it, testing the weight, the balance. Then he swung. The blade bit deep into the log, splitting it clean. Another swing, another perfect split. "Your pa taught you well." "He was a good man." Isaiah's voice cracked. "Until he died. Then his brother came and took everything." Zeke was silent for a long moment, watching the boy work through his grief and rage, one axe stroke at a time. "His brother? That who you're running from?" Isaiah didn't answer directly, just swung harder, faster, each impact an exclamation point to unspeakable anger. "We're not running. We're surviving." "Fair distinction." They worked side by side as the sun climbed higher. Aida watched from the cabin, seeing her son stand a little straighter, swing a little surer, seeing something in him that had been missing since Thomas died. Not happiness, but purpose. The knock came just before sunset, hard and aggressive. Everyone froze. Zeke's hand moved to where his rifle should have been, remembered he'd thrown it in the snow, moved instead to the hunting knife at his belt. "Stay inside." He opened the door to find Abigail Porter on the porch, bundled in furs, her face hard as the frozen ground. "Zeke Hartwell, heard you brought that Apache woman home." "Mrs. Porter." "Don't Mrs. Porter me. You know what her kind did. 5 years ago. They killed my boy." From inside, Aida heard. Felt her children press closer. Felt Isaiah's hand find the knife Zeke had given him that morning for whittling. "I know what happened to Daniel. I'm sorry for your loss. But these children didn't kill him. Their blood did." "No." Zeke's voice went cold as winter stone. "War killed him. Hate killed him. Fear and ignorance and men who profit from fighting killed him. But 6 children who weren't even born yet, they didn't kill anybody." Abigail's face twisted with grief and rage too long buried. "You'd take their side? Against your own people?" "I'm taking the side of children who need shelter. That's all. This will have consequences, Zeke. People respect you in these parts, but if you harbor Indians, that respect won't last." Zeke stepped forward, not threatening but immovable. "Let me be clear, Abigail. These people are under my roof. That means they're under my protection. Anyone who threatens them, anyone at all, will answer to me personally. That includes you. That includes the town. That includes the law if they come knocking with unjust accusations. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first, won't be my last, but it's mine to make." He closed the door, stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. When he turned, he found 7 pairs of eyes watching him. Siki spoke first, her small voice filled with wonder. "You told her to leave us alone." "I did. Nobody ever does that." Zeke knelt down to the child's level, his massive frame somehow gentle. "Then nobody's been paying attention, because you deserve protecting." But Aida saw the truth in his eyes. Abigail Porter would be back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but she'd return with others, and when she did, Zeke's protection might not be enough. That night, the second storm hit. Worse than the first, vindictive and howling. They huddled inside the cabin, the fire burning high, and Aida felt the walls closing in. Not from the storm outside, from the certainty that they couldn't stay here forever, and when they left, the world would still be waiting. The pounding on the door came near midnight, different from Abigail's knock. Harder, more insistent, official. Zeke grabbed his knife, moved to the window, peered out into darkness barely broken by torchlight. Damn. What is it? 5 riders. One of them's wearing a star. Aida's blood turned to ice. She knew who it was before Zeke said the name. "That's him. That's Caleb. Thomas's brother." Zeke looked at her, questions in his eyes she didn't have time to answer. He opened the door a crack, stepped onto the porch, pulled the door shut behind him. 5 men sat on horses in the swirling snow. The one in front wore a tailored coat and a smile that made Aida's skin crawl even from inside the cabin. Caleb Brennan, handsome in a cold way, civilized in all the worst senses of the word. "Hartwell, didn't expect to find you involved in this mess." "This isn't a mess. It's a woman and her children seeking shelter. What's your business here, Caleb?" "My business is family. That Apache squaw in your cabin is my sister-in-law. Those children are my brother's offspring. She kidnapped them, ran off with property that belongs to me. Those children belong to their mother. Their mother is an Indian. Indians don't have property rights under United States law." Caleb's smile widened. "I have documentation. A will, signed by my brother Thomas, states clearly that if anything happens to him, I'm guardian of his children." From inside, Isaiah hissed, "He's lying. Pa would never—" Aida clamped a hand over her son's mouth. They couldn't be heard. Not yet. "Let me see this will," Zeke said. "You'll see it in court. Tomorrow morning. Camp Verde Courthouse. If she doesn't show up, I'll be back with a federal marshal and enough men to burn this cabin to the ground with all of you inside." The threat hung in the cold air. Zeke took a step forward. Despite being outnumbered 5-1, his presence filled the space. "You threatening me on my own property?" "I'm promising you consequences. Legal ones. Because unlike you, Hartwell, I understand how civilization works. I have the law on my side. I have paperwork. I have standing." He leaned forward in his saddle. "What do you have? A crush on a squaw and a death wish?" Before Zeke could respond, the door burst open. Aida stood there, baby Alo in her arms, the other children clustered behind her. "I'll go." "Aida, no. I won't let him burn your home. Won't let him hurt you for helping us." She met Caleb's eyes, her own full of hate so pure it burned. "I'll come with you, but the children stay here." Caleb laughed. "That's not how this works. The children are part of my claim. They're children, not property. They're whatever the law says they are, and the law says they're mine." Isaiah stepped forward, blade in hand. At 13, he was tall enough, angry enough, desperate enough to be dangerous. "You're not taking my mother. You're not taking any of us." Caleb's hand moved to his gun. The other 4 riders tensed. Zeke moved faster than a man his size should be able to, putting himself between Isaiah and the mounted men. "Nobody's drawing weapons. Nobody's taking anybody tonight. You want to do this legal, Caleb? Then we'll see you in court tomorrow. But you're not dragging a woman and children into a blizzard. Tomorrow then. Courthouse. 9 in the morning. If she doesn't show, I'll assume she's fleeing justice." Caleb pulled his horse around. "And Hartwell? Enjoy your last night with your Indian whore. It's the last one she'll spend as a free woman." They rode into the darkness, torches flickering like demons disappearing into hell. Inside the cabin, Aida stood rigid, trembling not from cold but from rage and fear tangled together. "I have to run. Take the children. Head for Mexico. Somewhere he can't. You'll never make it. Not in winter. Not with 6 children. Caleb knows that." "Then what do I do?" Zeke closed the door, leaned against it, thinking hard. "We go to court." "Court?" Isaiah's voice cracked with disbelief. "They'll never side with Ma. She's Apache. We're half-breeds. They'll give us to Caleb and he'll kill us. Not if we have evidence. Not if we have the truth." Zeke looked at Aida. Did Thomas have a real will? Something that contradicts what Caleb's claiming? He talked about making a new one, writing everything down properly, but he died before he could finish. Or so I thought. Where would he have kept important papers? At his trading post. But Caleb owns it now. He'd never let us. Then we don't ask permission. Aida stared at this mountain man proposing a crime to fight injustice. "You mean break in?" "I mean retrieve what's rightfully yours. Isaiah, you lived there. You know the layout?" The boy nodded slowly. "There's a back entrance, through the storage room. Pa kept his important papers in a safe behind the fireplace. Can you open it?" "Ma can. She knows the combination." All eyes turned to Aida. She thought of Thomas, of those last fevered days when he'd whispered numbers to her. His birthday. Her birthday. Isaiah's birthday. A pattern only they knew. "Yes, I can open it." "Then we go tonight, before Caleb thinks to destroy whatever's there. It's too dangerous. If we're caught, then we're caught trying, which is better than doing nothing." Zeke looked at each of them. "I won't force you. This is your choice. But I'll tell you straight. You go to court tomorrow with nothing, you lose. Caleb has money, connections, false documents that look real. You need truth to fight lies, and truth is sitting in that trading post." Aida looked at her children, at Isaiah, ready to fight, at Nalin, still weak from fever but fierce in her loyalty, at the little ones, too young to understand but old enough to be afraid. She thought of Thomas, of the night he died, whispering that she should be strong, that his brother was dangerous, that she needed to protect their children no matter what it cost. "We go, Isaiah and me. The others stay here with Zeke." "Ma, I should—" You should protect your brothers and sisters. That's your job now." She kissed Nalan's forehead, held the twins close, whispered prayers in Apache over baby Alo's sleeping form. Then she turned to Zeke. "If we don't come back, you'll come back. I'll make sure of it." The ride through darkness was terror and determination mixed equal. 2 hours east to Brennan Trading Post, Zeke leading the way on paths only he knew, Aita and Isaiah following on horses borrowed from the barn. The storm had paused, but the cold bit through every layer, turning exposed skin numb. They approached from behind, through trees that grew thick around the building. Light showed in the windows. One guard outside, smoking, stamping his feet against the cold. Zeke moved through the shadows like a spirit circled around. Aita heard a soft thud, a grunt. The guard collapsed into snow. "He'll wake with a headache, nothing permanent." They slipped inside through the storage entrance Isaiah indicated. The trading post smelled of leather and tobacco and memories. Aita's throat closed. Thomas had built this, had worked here until Caleb's poison slowly destroyed him from within. Isaiah led them to the office. The room had been ransacked, papers everywhere, drawers pulled out and emptied. Caleb had been looking for something. Hopefully hadn't found it. Aita went straight to the fireplace, the third stone from the left on the second row. She pushed. It pivoted. Behind it, darkness. She reached in, felt cold metal, the safe. Her fingers trembled as she spun the combination. 12, 25, 68. Isaiah's birthday. Click. The safe opened. Inside, a metal box. She lifted it out, opened the lid. Thomas's real will. Dated, notarized, legal. Leaving everything to his beloved wife Aita and their children. Not one mention of Caleb. Letters. Thomas to a lawyer asking for advice on how to protect his family from his brother. Thomas to a friend explaining his fear that Caleb might poison him. And a journal. Thomas's journal. The last entry stopped Aita's heart. December 10th, 1874. Caleb came again today, eyes wrong, breath smelling of whiskey and rage. Said I'd regret not selling him the claim. Said I'd beg him to take it. I think he put something in my food. Stomach burning. Vision blurred. If I die, if this is how it ends, someone must know. Caleb Brennan murdered me. Protect Aita. Protect the children. Don't let him win. "Ma?" Isaiah's voice shook. "What does it say?" "It says your uncle killed your father, and we can prove it." Footsteps. Someone coming down the hall. A voice calling out for the guard who wouldn't answer. "Time to go." They ran for the back entrance. Behind them, shouts. A gunshot. The bullet took a chunk out of the doorframe as they dove through. To the horses, mounted, riding hard through trees that tore at clothes and skin. More shots. One grazed Zeke's shoulder, cutting through buckskin, leaving a line of blood. Isaiah saw, yelled, "You're hit! Keep riding." They didn't stop until dawn broke over Mogollon Rim, painting snow gold and red. Only then did they slow, breathing hard, horses lathered with sweat despite the cold. Aita pulled out cloth, cleaned Zeke's wound with snow and herbs from her medicine bag. The bullet had barely touched him, but it had touched. He'd bled for them, literally. "You took a bullet for us." "Rather me than you." Isaiah stared at this man, this stranger who'd become something more in the span of 2 days. The anger that had sustained him since his father's death shifted, making room for something unexpected. Gratitude, and the first seeds of trust. They rode back to the cabin as the second storm finally broke. Blue sky emerged, cold and perfect, and promising nothing but what it was. Another day, another chance. Inside, the other children rushed to meet them. Nalan checked Zeke's wound with the careful attention of a healer in training. Siki climbed into Aita's lap. The twins showed off a cat they'd found in the barn, and Isaiah, holding the metal box with its precious evidence, looked at Zeke with new eyes. "Thank you, for helping Ma, for helping us." Zeke just nodded. Words weren't needed. Action had spoken loud enough. They had evidence now. They had truth. Tomorrow they'd face Caleb in court. Tomorrow they'd fight for justice. Tonight, they were alive. Together. And that was enough. Dawn came too soon, and not soon enough. Aida barely slept, her mind churning through everything that could go wrong. In 9 hours they'd stand before a judge who might not care about truth, might not see past her brown skin to the evidence in that metal box. In 9 hours, everything would be decided. She found Zeke outside at first light, standing on the ridge overlooking the valley. He hadn't changed clothes, still wore the buckskin shirt with the bullet graze, dried blood dark against leather. A cigarette smoldered between his fingers, the smoke rising thin and straight in the still air. Couldn't sleep either? He turned, nodded once. Kept thinking about every way this could go wrong. And? There's a lot of ways. He took a drag, exhaled slowly. But there's one way it goes right. We tell the truth. We show the evidence. We trust that somewhere in that courthouse, there's still justice. You have more faith in the law than I do. Not faith. Hope. There's a difference. Aida stood beside him, looking out at the territory that had been Apache land for centuries before white men drew lines and called it theirs. Beautiful and brutal, this country. It gave and took in equal measure, and it never apologized for either. If we lose today, if Caleb gets custody, he'll kill them. Maybe not right away, but slowly, through cruelty and neglect and the grinding down of their spirits until they wish they were dead. We won't let that happen. How can you be sure? Zeke turned to face her fully, and in the growing light she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Determination so fierce it was almost frightening. Because I already lost one family to injustice, I'll die before I lose another. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Another family. He'd called them that. Not charity case, not obligation. Family. Before Aida could respond, hoofbeats echoed from below. A rider approaching fast. Zeke's hand went to his knife, but relaxed when he recognized the figure. That's Doc Finch. The old man pulled his horse to a stop in the clearing, dismounting with the stiffness of someone who'd ridden too far too fast. His lined face was grave, but his eyes held something Aida couldn't quite name. Zeke. Mrs. Brennan. I came as soon as I heard. He pulled a paper from his coat. Got word through the telegraph last night. Caleb's lawyer filed a motion to have the trial moved up. Wants to get it done before you can gather witnesses. When? 9 this morning. Still the same time, but he's pushing for a fast verdict. In and out in an hour. Doc's expression hardened. Man's trying to railroad you before anyone can help. Then we counter with our own witnesses. Zeke's mind was already working, calculating angles. Doc, you treated Thomas. You saw him in those final days. I did, and I'll testify to it. But Zeke, we need more than an old country doctor. We need people Caleb can't dismiss or intimidate, people who carry weight in this territory. Like who? Like her. Doc pointed down the trail. Another rider approached, this one sitting straight-backed despite the cold, dressed in the practical clothing of someone who worked with her hands and her mind. As she drew closer, Aida recognized the face from the general store encounter days before. But this wasn't the scene of rejection. This woman was someone else. Eliza Whitmore, the schoolteacher from Camp Verde. She dismounted with practiced ease, carrying a leather satchel that looked heavy with papers. Mr. Hartwell, Mrs. Brennan, Doc told me you might need a character witness. Aida stared. You're the teacher who didn't turn us away. I am, and I've brought something. Eliza opened her satchel, pulled out a document covered in neat handwriting. This is a sworn statement testifying to your character, Mrs. Brennan. I've also written letters to 3 other families whose children attend my school. Mixed blood children. Apache, Navajo, Mexican, white. All learning together. She handed the papers to Zeke. I won't stand by while a good mother loses her children because narrow-minded men think blood matters more than love. I'll testify, today, and I'll make damn sure Judge Morrison hears every word." Aida felt tears burn behind her eyes. Kindness, real kindness, still felt like a miracle. "Why would you risk this for us? You barely know me." Eliza's expression softened. "I know you came to my school twice asking about enrollment. I know you were polite, articulate, and clearly cared deeply about education. I know your daughter Nalin can already read better than half the white children in town. That tells me everything about the kind of mother you are." She looked at the cabin, where the children were beginning to stir. "And I know those children deserve better than to be raised by a man who sees them as property instead of people." The sun climbed higher. More riders appeared. 3 Apache scouts from Fort Apache, men who worked for the army but maintained their tribal connections. They came silently, nodded to Aida in the Apache way, and spoke briefly with Zeke in a mix of English and hand signs. "We stand with you, sister," one said in Apache. "Your mother was Red Rock Clan. Your grandmother healed many. We do not forget." Then came the surprise that shocked even Zeke into silence. A wagon rolled up the trail, and from it emerged Abigail Porter, the same woman who'd threatened them days before, the same woman whose son had died in an Apache raid. She climbed down slowly, as if each movement caused pain, not physical, the other kind. "Mrs. Brennan, I need to speak with you." Aida stiffened, hand instinctively moving toward the knife at her belt. Zeke stepped between them. "Abigail, if you're here to cause trouble, I'm here to beg forgiveness." The words fell like stones into still water, ripples spreading outward in silence. "I couldn't sleep last night. Kept seeing Nolan's face. Your daughter, the one who came to my store with Miss Whitmore." Abigail's voice shook. "She was so polite. Said please and thank you. Asked permission before touching anything. She reminded me of Daniel." Tears tracked down the older woman's face, cutting through years of carefully maintained hardness. "My boy died 5 years ago, 12 years old. Apache raiders killed him during an attack on our settlement. And I've hated every Apache since then. Every brown face I saw his killers." She took a step toward Aida, hands outstretched but not touching. "But last night I realized something. The men who killed Daniel, they're not you. They're not your children. War killed my son. Hate killed my son. And I've been letting that same hate turn me into something he'd be ashamed of." Abigail pulled a basket from her wagon. Inside, fresh bread, still warm. "I baked this for your children. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's a start. I'll testify today. I'll tell the judge that I was wrong about you. That you're a good mother who deserves to keep her babies." Aida stood frozen, unable to process this reversal. Every interaction with white townspeople had been hostile or indifferent. Kindness didn't come wrapped in baskets from the mothers of raid victims. But Abigail's tears were real, her regret palpable. And sometimes, Aida realized, people could change. Not all, not most, but some. She took the basket. Then, surprising even herself, she stepped forward and embraced Abigail. The white woman and the Apache woman, both mothers, both survivors, both marked by loss, held each other and wept. The children watched from the cabin doorway. Siki tugged on Isaiah's hand. "Why is Mama hugging the mean lady?" Isaiah's voice was thick with emotion he didn't fully understand yet. "Because maybe she's not mean anymore, little bird. Maybe she's just been hurting." The ride to Camp Verde was a procession. Zeke and Aida in front, the children behind them, then Doc Finch, Eliza, Abigail, the Apache scouts. Others joined along the way. Ranchers who'd traded fairly with Thomas. Townspeople who'd benefited from Aida's healing herbs. A Mexican family whose daughter had been saved by Nolan's quick thinking with a rattlesnake bite. By the time they reached the courthouse, the crowd numbered nearly 50. Not an army, but a community. And that was something Caleb Brennan hadn't anticipated. The courthouse was a 2-story timber building, imposing in its plainness. The American flag hung limply from a pole, the stars and stripes barely visible in the cold morning air. People packed the street outside, some there to support Aida, many there simply for the spectacle. Caleb stood on the courthouse steps with his lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit. When Caleb saw the crowd following Aida, his face went pale, then flushed with rage. "What is this? A circus?" "This is justice, Caleb," Zeke's voice carried across the crowd. "Or at least our best attempt at it." Inside, the courtroom was already full, every bench packed, people standing along the walls. The air was thick with anticipation and body heat. At the front, Judge Morrison sat behind his desk, looking older than his 62 years. He'd been a fair judge once, or so people said, but money had a way of bending fairness. "Order." His gavel cracked down. "This court will come to order." The next hour would determine everything. Caleb's lawyer stood first, confident and smooth. His opening statement painted Aida as an unfit mother, a savage who'd kidnapped civilized children, a woman with no legal standing under United States law. He presented Caleb's forged will with a flourish, the notary seal looking official enough to fool anyone who didn't look too close. "Your Honor, this is simple. Thomas Brennan, a white citizen in good standing, left clear instructions that his brother should raise his children. The woman sitting there had no legal marriage under territorial law. She has no claim. She has no rights. She's simply a squaw who happened to bear my client's brother's children." The word squaw hit like a slap. Aida felt Isaiah tense beside her, felt her own rage rise hot and immediate. But Zeke's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. "Wait. Save it for our turn." When the lawyer finished, Zeke stood. He wasn't a legal man, wasn't educated in law schools or trained in courtroom rhetoric. He was a mountain man who read the forest better than books. But he understood truth, and he spoke it plain. "Your Honor, the document Mr. Caleb presented is a forgery. We have the real will, found in Thomas Brennan's safe, dated and notarized properly." He handed the will to the judge. Morrison's expression flickered, uncertainty breaking through practiced neutrality. "Furthermore, we have Thomas's journal, his own words describing how Caleb poisoned him, threatened him, tried to steal his land claim. We have letters to his lawyer asking for protection from his brother." Zeke placed each document on the judge's desk with deliberate care. "But more than paper, we have people. People who knew Thomas, who know Aida, who'll testify to the truth that Caleb's trying to bury under false documents and prejudice." "Objection!" Caleb's lawyer jumped up. "This is highly irregular. These documents could have been fabricated." "Then let's test them. Let's hear witnesses. Let's put truth against lies and see which one stands." Judge Morrison looked at the papers, at the crowded courtroom, at Caleb's increasingly nervous face. He was trapped between the money he'd taken and the community watching his every move. "I'll hear the witnesses, but keep it brief. This court has other business today." Doc Finch testified first. His words were measured, professional, damning. "I treated Thomas Brennan for 2 years before his death. The death certificate says tuberculosis. But I had doubts then, and I have certainty now. His symptoms matched arsenic poisoning. Slow, deliberate, meant to look like natural illness." "Why didn't you say something at the time?" the judge asked. "Because Thomas asked me not to. He knew Caleb had connections, power. He thought if he just gave Caleb money, the man would leave his family alone." Doc's voice hardened. "He was wrong, and I've regretted my silence every day since." Eliza Whitmore spoke next, her school teacher's clarity cutting through the dense air. "I've taught mixed-blood children for 3 years, Your Honor. I've seen what happens when they're raised by people who see them as lesser. They grow up broken, ashamed, unable to exist in either world." She looked directly at Caleb. "And I've seen what happens when they're raised by someone who loves them. Aida's daughter Nalin is the brightest student I've ever taught. She's compassionate, curious, already learning medicine from her mother. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because she has a mother who believes in her." Then came Abigail Porter. The courtroom went silent when she stood, everyone knowing her story, her loss, her very public hatred of Apaches. "Mrs. Porter," Zeke's voice was gentle, "tell the court about your son. Daniel was 12 when he died. Apache raiders attacked our settlement. They killed 17 people, including my boy." Her voice broke, but she pushed through. "I've hated Apaches ever since. Everyone I saw his killers. And now? Now I see children. Just children. Mrs. Brennan's daughter came to my store last week. She was kind, polite, reminded me that hate is a choice, not a destiny." Abigail looked at the judge. "If we give those children to Caleb Brennan, we're choosing hate. We're choosing to punish them for being born to the wrong mother. And that's not justice, Your Honor. That's cruelty wearing justice's robes." The Apache scouts testified in their native tongue, Aida translating. They spoke of her mother's healing, her grandmother's wisdom, the honor of the Red Rock clan. They spoke of children needing roots, needing to know where they came from even as they learned where they were going. Through it all, Caleb sat rigid, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. The case was slipping away. Everyone could feel it. Then Isaiah asked to speak. "Your Honor, I'm 13. I'm old enough to know my own mind." The boy stood tall, voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "My pa was Thomas Brennan, best man I ever knew. When he died, Uncle Caleb came and told Ma she had to leave, told her she could stay if she worked for him." Isaiah's jaw clenched. I know what kind of work he meant. I was 11, but I understood. He wanted to use my mother like property. When she refused, he threw us out in winter. We nearly died. Would have died if Mr. Hartwell hadn't found us. He turned to face Caleb directly. "You didn't want us then. You don't want us now. You just want the gold claim Pa filed. You want the land. And you'll kill us to get it, just like you killed my father." "That's a lie." Caleb shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this boy is confused, traumatized by his mother's influence." "Sit down, Mr. Brennan." "I will not sit down while some half-breed bastard accuses me of murder. I'm a white citizen. I have rights. That squaw has no standing in this court. Those mongrel children have no claim, and this whole proceeding is a farce designed to steal what's rightfully mine." The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order! I will have order!" But Caleb had gone too far, said too much. His mask of civilized concern had cracked, revealing the rot beneath. And everyone saw it. Zeke stood slowly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Your Honor, Caleb Brennan just told you exactly what this case is about. Not children's welfare, not family, just greed and hate wearing a legal disguise." He held up Thomas's journal. This is Thomas Brennan's own words, written in his hand, describing how his brother threatened him, poisoned him, planned to steal everything. It's dated, it's witnessed, it's truth. Zeke placed the journal on the judge's desk. Caleb Brennan murdered his brother. He forged a will. He tried to destroy evidence by burning the trading post last night. And now he's trying to use your court to finish the theft by taking these children. These are serious accusations, Mr. Hartwell. Then investigate them. But while you do, keep those children with their mother, because that's where they belong. Judge Morrison looked at the evidence spread before him, at the crowded courtroom, at Caleb's flushed, furious face, at Aida sitting quietly, dignity radiating from her like heat from fire. The silence stretched. A minute. 2. Finally, Morrison spoke. "I'm calling a recess. 1 hour. When we return, I'll have my decision." The next hour passed like years. Aida stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by people offering support, encouragement, prayers. But all she could think about was her children, about what would happen if they lost, about whether she had the strength to run again, to keep fighting against a world determined to break her. Zeke appeared at her side, silent and solid. "However this goes, we're not done fighting. What if the judge rules against us? Then we appeal. We fight dirty if we have to. We run if we must." He turned to face her. but we don't give up. Not while there's breath in our bodies. Aida looked at this man who'd become her ally, her protector, something more she wasn't ready to name yet. This mountain man with eyes the color of mountain sky and a heart bigger than the territory. Why? The question came out raw. Why do you care so much? Zeke was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I watched Morning Star die, watched little Fawn slip away, and I did nothing. I couldn't save them. But I can save you. I can save your children. And maybe, just maybe, that's why I survived. Why I'm still here when they're not. He met her eyes. You and your children, you didn't just need me. I needed you. To remember what it feels like to be alive. To have purpose. To fight for something that matters. Aida's hand found his. Their fingers interlaced, rough skin against rough skin, two survivors holding on in the storm. The hour ended. They filed back inside. Judge Morrison sat at his bench, looking like he'd aged a decade in 60 minutes. In his hand, Thomas's will, the real one. I've reviewed all evidence presented today. I've considered testimony from multiple witnesses, and I've examined my own conscience, which I admit has been lacking of late. He cleared his throat. The will presented by Caleb Brennan is a forgery. The notary seal was stolen from Prescott Courthouse in 1873, a year before Thomas Brennan allegedly signed it. The signatures don't match. The document is fraudulent. Gasps filled the room. Caleb started to stand, but his lawyer pulled him down. The will presented by Mrs. Brennan is authentic, notarized properly, dated correctly, leaving all property to her and her children. Morrison's gaze swept the courtroom. Furthermore, Thomas Brennan's journal provides probable cause to investigate his death as a possible homicide. Marshal Thornton, you'll take Caleb Brennan into custody pending investigation. No! Caleb lunged for the door. Zeke was faster, blocking his path with sheer mass and determination. The marshal and his deputies surrounded Caleb, iron cuffs clicking shut around wrists that had never expected to wear them. "You Apache witch!" Caleb screamed at Aida. "This should all be mine! Mine!" But his voice faded as they dragged him away, justice delayed, but finally arriving. Judge Morrison wasn't finished. "Aida Brennan, you're hereby declared legal owner of all property left by your husband, the trading post, the gold claim, 160 acres of land. Furthermore, I'm issuing a decree granting you territorial citizenship with all rights and protections that entails." He looked at her children. "Those children remain in your custody. Anyone who attempts to take them without legal cause will answer to this court and to me personally." The gavel fell. It was over. Aida sat motionless, unable to believe it. They'd won. Actually, won. Justice had happened, despite everything weighted against them. Then the courtroom erupted in cheers. People she barely knew surrounded them, offering congratulations, touches of support. The Apache scouts raised their hands in salute. Doc Finch had tears in his eyes. Eliza hugged her like a sister. Even Abigail smiled, genuine and warm. And her children, her beautiful children, piled onto her in a mass of arms and tears and laughter. They'd survived. They'd won. They were free. Outside on the courthouse steps, the crowd continued to celebrate. Aida held her children close, feeling their warmth, their weight, their realness. They were hers. Legally, officially, undeniably hers. Zeke stood apart, giving them space for their moment. But Siki broke free, ran to him, grabbed his hand. "Did you hear, Mr. Zeke? We get to stay. We get to keep Mama." He knelt down to her level, this grizzled mountain man brought low by a 6-year-old's joy. "I heard, little bird. I heard. Does this mean we can stay with you too?" The question hung in the cold air. Every eye turned to Zeke, waiting for his answer. Aida held her breath. "That's up to your mama. But if she's willing, I'd be honored to have you all, for as long as you want to stay." Aida stood, her children parting to let her through. She walked to where Zeke knelt, this man who'd saved them, fought for them, stood between them and destruction without hesitation. "We'd like to stay, if the offer's real, if you truly mean it." "I truly mean it." And there, on the courthouse steps in Camp Verde, Arizona Territory, in the winter of 1877, a new kind of family was born. Not through blood or law or tradition, but through choice, through fighting together, through surviving the storm and choosing to build something new in the aftermath. The crowd gradually dispersed, heading home with a story they'd tell for years. But one figure remained, standing at the edge of the square. An old Apache man, white-haired and weathered, wearing traditional dress and carrying a carved walking stick. Red Skywalker had come to witness and to bless. The old Apache walked toward them with the unhurried grace of someone who'd seen 70 winters and learned that rushing accomplished nothing. Red Skywalker's face was a map of the territory itself, carved by wind and sun and experience. His eyes, dark as mountain caves, held wisdom that couldn't be taught, only lived. He stopped before Aida, spoke in Apache, the old dialect her grandmother had used. "Daughter of Red Rock clan, your mother healed many, your grandmother walked with spirits. They are proud today." Aida dropped to her knees, the gesture automatic, respectful. "Grandfather, you honor us with your presence. I honor truth. I honor courage. I honor family made not from blood but from choice." He turned to Zeke, studied him with eyes that saw past skin and bone into whatever made a man who he was. Red Skywalker spoke again, and Aida translated, her voice catching with emotion. "He says your spirit is clean, that you loved a Cherokee woman and honored the old ways, that the mountains accept you as one of their own." Zeke bowed his head, the gesture of respect universal across cultures. The old man reached into the pouch at his waist, pulled out 2 strips of leather cord. He tied one around Zeke's wrist, the other around Aida's. His voice rose, carrying across the square in words that predated European arrival by centuries. Aida's translation came through tears. "Two rivers meet, two become one. The water flows stronger, the spirits witness, the mountains protect." Red Skywalker placed his weathered hands on their joined ones. "You have walked through fire. You have faced those who would destroy you. Now you must build, together, for yourselves, for these children, for all who come after seeking shelter from the storm." He looked at the 6 children clustered around their mother. "Teach them both paths, Apache ways and white ways. Let them walk in 2 worlds with honor. This is their gift. This is their burden. This is their strength." With that, the old man turned and walked away, his stick tapping against frozen ground, his blessing hanging in the air like smoke from sacred fires. The days that followed the trial moved with a strange momentum, as if the universe itself had decided this family had suffered enough and was now pushing them toward something better. The burned remains of Brennan Trading Post sat like a scar on the landscape, but Zeke and the men from town began rebuilding within a week. Isaiah worked alongside them, his 13-year-old frame filling out from good food and hard labor. Zeke taught him the mountain man's precision, how to measure twice and cut once, how to read wood grain and work with it rather than against it. The boy learned fast, hungry for male guidance he'd been missing since his father died. One afternoon, as they were raising a support beam, Isaiah spoke without looking at Zeke. "Pa used to tell me a man's worth is measured by what he builds, not what he inherits. Smart man, your father. He would have liked you." The words came out rough, pulled from somewhere deep. "Would have trusted you with Ma and us. I think he'd be glad you're here." Zeke's hands stilled on the hammer. "That means more than you know, boy. I'm not calling you Pa. That name's taken. Already got a father, even if he's gone." "Good. Thomas Brennan deserves that honor." Isaiah finally looked at him, those blue eyes bright with unshed tears. "But maybe I could call you something else, if you'd be willing." "What's that?" "Father. Not Pa, but Father. Man who stands between us and the wolves. Man who teaches me how to be strong. Man who loves my mother right." Zeke set down the hammer carefully, turned to face the boy full on. "I'd be honored." They shook hands, man to man, and something that had been broken in Isaiah since Thomas died began, slowly, to heal. At the cabin, Aida was teaching Nalin the deeper mysteries of Apache healing. The girl had a gift, Doc Finch said so, and gifts needed nurturing. They harvested herbs from the mountainside, Aida explaining how yucca root could reduce inflammation, how sage cleansed both body and spirit, how willow bark was nature's answer to fever. "Grandmother said plants speak if you listen," Aida told her daughter. "Not with words, with feelings. You put your hands on a plant, you ask its permission. If it says yes, you harvest. If no, you move on. White people don't do that." "No, but we're not just white people. We're not just Apache. We're both. And that means we can take the wisdom of both worlds." Nalin carefully dug around a yucca root, extracting it without damaging the plant. "Miss Eliza says I could be a real doctor someday, a licensed physician, not just a healer." "You could be anything you want. Your father wanted that for you. Education, opportunity, a future where you choose your path." The girl looked up at her mother. "Do you think he'd be proud of us, of how we survived?" Aida's throat closed. She pulled Nalin into a fierce embrace. "Baby, he's watching from wherever spirits go, and he's so proud his heart could burst. You're everything he dreamed you'd be." Down at the rebuilt trading post, which now bore a new sign reading Hartwell and Brennan Trading Company, all welcome, customers arrived in steady streams. White ranchers trading for supplies, Apache families buying tools, Mexican traders bringing goods from the south. The building became what Thomas had always dreamed, a place where different peoples could meet in peace. Abigail Porter came weekly, her initial penance evolving into genuine friendship with Aida. The two women, both marked by loss, found common ground in survival and the stubborn determination to make something good from grief. One morning, Abigail brought yarn, brilliant colors impossible to produce with natural dyes. Thought Nalin might like to learn knitting, keep her hands busy during winter evenings. "You'd teach her?" "If you're willing. And maybe, if it's not too much to ask, you could teach me some of your healing ways. I've got grandchildren now, you know. Would be good to know how to treat fevers and such." Aida smiled, remembering the woman who'd turned them away in Jerome, and marveling at how far they'd both come. "I'd be honored to teach you, Abigail. My grandmother said knowledge grows when it's shared." Spring came to Mogollon Rim like a promise kept. Snow melted into rushing streams. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows in colors that hurt to look at directly. The air smelled of pine and possibility. Zeke had moved his belongings from the cabin to a small room attached to the trading post, giving Aida and the children the main house. It was proper, respectful, the action of a man who understood that some things couldn't be rushed. But the separation felt wrong somehow, unnatural, like a river forced to split when it wanted to flow whole. He came for dinner every evening. The children had started calling him father, even the little ones who barely remembered Thomas. Baby Alo, now walking and talking in sentences that mixed Apache and English, would wait by the door each night until Zeke arrived, then launch himself into the mountain man's arms with absolute trust. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Aida found Zeke on the porch, staring at stars scattered across black sky like salt spilled on obsidian. "Can't sleep?" He turned, smiled that slight smile that was becoming more frequent. "Thinking too much. Happens sometimes." "About what?" "About how strange life is. 6 months ago I was alone, waiting to die really, just going through motions. Then a blizzard brought 7 people to my door, and now I can't imagine going back to how it was." Aida sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching. We changed your life. You saved my life. There's a difference. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only develops between people who've survived something terrible together. An owl called from the forest. Somewhere, a coyote answered. Zeke, I need to ask you something. Ask. Why haven't you kissed me? The question hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Zeke turned to face her, surprise clear on his bearded face. Because I don't want you to think that's why I helped. Don't want you feeling obligated because I stood between you and Caleb. I know that's not why you helped. Do you? Because I need you to be sure. Need you to know that everything I've done, I'd do it the same even if there was never anything between us. You and your children deserve protection, deserve respect, deserve safety, not as payment for affection, as human right. Aida reached up, placed her hand against his bearded jaw. I know. I've known for months. You're not like Caleb, not like any man I've met except Thomas. I'm not Thomas. No, you're Ezekiel Hartwell, and that's exactly who I want. She leaned in, closed the distance, pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two damaged people testing whether they could still feel this without fear. Then deeper, more certain, 6 months of longing and denial breaking like a dam. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. I love you, Zeke said, the words simple and true. Don't know when it happened. Maybe that first day in the snow, maybe the night you trusted me with your children, but it's there, real as these mountains. I love you too. Didn't think I could again. Thought Thomas took that when he died, but you showed me hearts can heal if given the right soil. Marry me. The proposal came sudden, unplanned, pulled from his core. Aida pulled back, eyes wide. What? Marry me. Not because it's proper, not because people expect it, but because I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine and I'm yours. Want to raise those children together, really together, not as friendly neighbors, but as parents. Want to build something that lasts beyond both of us. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a ring. Copper, simple, etched with designs that blended Cherokee patterns and Apache symbols. Made this myself. Took me 3 months. Kept messing up, starting over. But I wanted it to honor both our histories. Morning Star and Thomas. What they taught us. What they'd want for us. Aida stared at the ring, tears streaming down her face. The children. The children already call me father. Already see us as family. We're just making official what's been true for months. She looked at this man, this mountain bear of a man who'd saved them, fought for them, loved them with a fierce protectiveness that never demanded anything in return. She thought of Thomas, of the love they'd shared, and knew somehow that he'd approve, that he'd want her happy, want the children raised by a good man. Yes, God help me, yes. Zeke slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no doubt, just two survivors choosing life, choosing love, choosing each other. Inside the cabin, pressed against the window, 6 children watched and grinned. Told you, Isaiah whispered. Told you they loved each other. Does this mean Mr. Zeke is really our Poa now? Siki asked. Father, Isaiah corrected. And, yeah, little bird, I think it does. The wedding was held beside the hot spring behind Zeke's cabin, the place both Apache and mountain men considered sacred. 2 ceremonies blended into one. Red Skywalker performed the Apache blessing, speaking words that predated territorial boundaries or racial divisions. Pastor Davis from Camp Verde handled the Christian vows, his voice carrying across the clearing where 50 people gathered to witness. Aida wore a dress that Eliza and Abigail had sewn together, white cotton with Apache beadwork along the hem and sleeves. Zeke wore clean buckskin, his hair pulled back, beard trimmed. For once, he looked less like a bear and more like what he was, a man deeply, completely in love. Isaiah stood beside Zeke as best man, pride radiating from every fiber. Nalin stood with Aida, holding baby Alo. The other children clustered around, part of the ceremony itself, because this wasn't just two people joining. It was a family affirming what had already become true. When Pastor Davis asked who gave this woman to be married, all 6 children spoke in unison. "We do." There wasn't a dry eye in the clearing. The vows were simple. Zeke promised to honor Aida's heritage, to raise her children as his own, to stand between them and any threat until his last breath. Aida promised to build a life with him, to blend their worlds, to remember Morning Star and Thomas while creating something new. Red Skywalker tied their wrists together with the same leather cords he'd given them months before, now braided into one. 2 rivers, 1 water, 2 families, 1 heart. The spirits rejoice. When Zeke kissed his bride, the crowd erupted. Apache ululations mixed with frontier whoops. Doc Finch wiped his eyes. Abigail sobbed openly, happy tears for the mother she'd once turned away. The celebration lasted into evening. Food appeared from everywhere, a communal feast. Music, too, fiddles and drums creating something neither wholly white nor wholly Apache, but uniquely territorial. Children played, running wild in the way kids do when adults are too distracted to enforce bedtime. As the sun set, painting the rim in colors that defied description, Zeke and Aida stood together, watching their children play with other children, Apache and white mixing without thought or fear. "Think we can make this last?" Aida asked. "This peace? This mixing of worlds?" "Don't know about the whole world, but our corner of it? Yeah, I think we can. You saved us, you know. That day in the blizzard, you saved all of us." Zeke shook his head. "No, we saved each other. I was drowning in grief and loneliness. You were drowning in rejection and fear. We grabbed each other's hands and pulled together. That's how survival works. Nobody makes it alone." He turned to face her fully, this woman who'd become his wife, his partner, his reason for greeting each morning. 6 months ago, a little girl asked why nobody wanted them. Today, I want to answer that question. It wasn't that nobody wanted you. It's that you hadn't found the right people yet. People who could see past skin and history and fear to the humans underneath. And you're those people? I'm one of them. But look around. Doc and Eliza and Abigail and Red Skywalker and 50 others who showed up today. You're not unwanted, Aida. You never were. You were just temporarily lost. And now you're home. She leaned against him, feeling his solidity, his warmth, his absolute reliability. "We're home." That night, as stars wheeled overhead and the celebration wound down, Isaiah found Zeke alone for a moment. "Father, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think Pa would approve? Of you and Ma? Of all this?" Zeke considered the question carefully, giving it the weight it deserved. "I think your father loved your mother enough to want her happy, loved you children enough to want you safe, and I think, wherever he is, he's grateful someone stepped up to protect what he couldn't protect himself." He placed a hand on Isaiah's shoulder. "You don't have to choose between honoring his memory and accepting me. There's room for both. I'll never replace him. Never try to. But I'll stand beside his memory and help you become the man he'd want you to be." Isaiah nodded slowly. Then, in a gesture that surprised them both, he hugged Zeke hard and fierce. "Thank you. For everything. For being here. For loving us." Zeke's arms came around the boy, this young man who'd borne too much too soon. "Thank you for letting me. For giving me a chance. For becoming the son I never got to raise." They stood there, father and son, not by blood but by choice, under stars that cared nothing for racial divisions, only the eternal dance of light against darkness. Inside the cabin, Aida tucked her younger children into bed, all of them piled together like puppies, despite having more space now. She kissed each forehead, whispered blessings in Apache and English, told them how proud she was, how loved they were. Siki grabbed her hand before she could leave. "Mama, are you happy?" "So happy, little bird. Happier than I've been in years." "Because of Father Zeke?" "Because of all of it. Because we survived. Because we fought. Because we found people who saw us as human beings instead of problems. Because we built something good from something terrible." She smoothed Siki's hair back. "That's what life is, baby. Taking the broken pieces and making them into something beautiful. And that's what we've done. What we'll keep doing." The child smiled, satisfied, and drifted off to sleep. Aida walked outside to find Zeke waiting, silhouetted against the stars. He held out his hand. She took it. Together they walked toward the cabin that was now truly theirs, toward a future unwritten but promising, toward a life built on survival and love and the stubborn insistence that family was what you made it. Behind them, the Mogollon Rim stood eternal, having witnessed countless families, countless struggles, countless triumphs. These mountains had seen Apache and white and Mexican and every combination between. They'd seen hate and love and everything mixing together. And they'd keep watching, long after Zeke and Aida were gone, as their children's children learned the same lessons. That love transcends bloodlines. That family is chosen as much as born. That sometimes the people who find you in storms become the people who stay through sunshine. The mountains remembered. The mountains protected. And on this night, the mountains rejoiced. Summer arrived in 1878 with heat that shimmered off rock faces and turned the trading post into an oven by noon. But business had never been better. The Hartwell and Brennan Trading Company had become something more than a store. It was a meeting place, a symbol, proof that different peoples could work together and prosper. Isaiah, now 15, had grown into his father's height with Zeke's broadening shoulders. He ran trap lines in the morning, worked the counter in the afternoon, and was teaching 3 younger boys from town the art of tracking. One of them was white. One was Navajo. One was half Mexican. None of them cared about the other's bloodlines. One morning, as Isaiah was demonstrating how to read deer sign, a wagon rolled up the trail. Not unusual, except this wagon carried a family that looked hauntingly familiar. A man and woman, both exhausted. 4 children, hollow-eyed and thin. The woman was pregnant, belly swollen under a threadbare dress. Aida saw them first. Something in their posture, their desperate hope fighting losing battles with despair, struck her heart like a bell. She knew that look, had worn it herself 2 years ago. She walked out to meet them as the wagon stopped. The man climbed down, hat in hand, eyes on the ground. "Sir, ma'am, we've been traveling for 6 weeks. Lost our homestead in Colorado to drought. We're looking for work, any work, a place to sleep. We can pay once we're on our feet. I give you my word." "How many children?" Aida asked gently. 4, and 1 on the way." His voice cracked. "We've tried every town from here to Fort Apache. Nobody wants a broke family with too many mouths to feed. But I'm a hard worker. My wife can cook, clean, sew. The children are well behaved. Please, we just need a chance." Behind him, the youngest child, maybe 5 years old, started crying. Soft, hopeless sobs that spoke of too many rejections, too many doors slammed in faces. Aida's eyes met the woman's, saw her own past reflected there. The fear, the shame of begging, the terrible knowledge that your children were suffering and you couldn't fix it. She turned to find Zeke standing in the trading post doorway. He'd heard everything. Their eyes met across the dusty yard, an entire conversation happening in silence. He nodded once. Aida turned back to the family. "You're at the Hartwell and Brennan Trading Company. We have work, we have food, and we have room." The man's head snapped up. "Really? You'd help us? Even though we're strangers?" "We were strangers once, too." Aida smiled, remembering another blizzard, another desperate moment. "Someone helped us when we had nothing. Now it's our turn." The woman burst into tears. The children stared with disbelief, slowly transforming into hope. The man tried to speak, failed, simply stood there shaking with relief so profound it bordered on collapse. Zeke walked over, his presence still commanding despite the gentleness in his voice. "Name's Ezekiel Hartwell. This is my wife, Aida. That young man over there is Isaiah, our eldest. I'm James Cooper. This is my wife, Sarah. Our children, Emma, Thomas, little James, and Rebecca. Well, Cooper family, let's get you settled. Isaiah, show them the cabin behind the trading post. It's been empty since we moved the family to the big house. They can stay there." "Yes, Father." As Isaiah led the stunned family away, Zeke and Aida stood together watching them go. "We're doing it again," Zeke said. "Yes. Taking in strangers, risking our comfort, maybe our safety." "Yes." "Good." He put his arm around her shoulders. "It's what this place is supposed to be, what we're supposed to be. Not just a trading post, a refuge." Aida leaned into him. "Red Sky Walker said we were supposed to build something, for ourselves and for those who come after. I think this is what he meant." Over the following weeks, the Cooper family settled in. James proved skilled with horses, taking over the small stable they'd built. Sarah helped Aida with the garden and taught Nalan advanced sewing techniques. Their children played with Aida's younger ones, new friendships forming with the easy grace of childhood. One evening, Sarah found Aida alone in the garden, harvesting herbs in the golden hour before sunset. "Mrs. Hartwell, may I speak plainly?" "Please, and call me Aida." Sarah hesitated, gathering courage. "Why did you help us? We're nobody to you. And with your being Apache, well, I'd think you'd have reason to distrust white folk." Aida's hands stilled on the sage plant. "4 years ago, my husband died. His brother waited, then 2 years ago threw us out with nothing when he'd laid his legal groundwork. 6 children and me, we wandered through a blizzard. 3 towns turned us away. We were dying when Zeke found us." She looked up at Sarah. "He could have left us there. Would have been easier, safer. But he saw people who needed help, and he gave it. No conditions, no expectations, just kindness when we'd forgotten what kindness looked like. That's why you took us in. Partly, but also because pain doesn't discriminate. Suffering looks the same on every face. And if we only help people who look like us, think like us, pray like us, then we're no better than the ones who turned us away." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I promise you, we'll earn our keep. We'll prove worthy of this chance." "You don't have to prove anything. Just be here. Be safe. Heal. The rest will follow." Summer deepened into fall. The trading post thrived, becoming known throughout the territory as a place where anyone could trade fairly, where bloodlines mattered less than honesty. Apache families came knowing they wouldn't be cheated. White ranchers appreciated the fair prices and quality goods. Mexican traders brought items from the South, creating a three-way commerce that benefited everyone. Doc Finch, now 69, had taken Nalan as a formal apprentice. The 13-year-old girl had a gift for medicine that transcended anything he could teach, blending Apache wisdom with modern techniques. She'd saved 2 lives that summer, a rancher with a gunshot wound, a Navajo child with fever that would have killed her without intervention. "You're better than most doctors I've known," Doc told her one afternoon, "and you're only 13. By the time you're my age, you'll be legendary." "I want to go to medical school, real school, back east. Learn everything there is to know." "You will. I'll make sure of it. We'll get you into a proper university, even if I have to call in every favor I've accumulated in 40 years of practice." Aida overheard this conversation. Pride swelled in her chest so intense it hurt. Her daughter, her beautiful, brilliant daughter, talking about medical school like it was possible, like being half Apache wasn't a barrier, but a bridge between healing traditions. That night, she told Zeke about it. They sat on the porch of their home, the big house they'd built together, watching stars emerge one by one. "Nolan wants to go to medical school." "Good. She should. It'll cost money, more than we've saved. Then we'll save more. Work harder, whatever it takes." Zeke squeezed her hand. "That's what parents do. We build futures for our children that we never got ourselves." Aida looked at him. This man who'd become so much more than she'd imagined that frozen day. "You're a good father. Better than most." "I'm trying. That's all any of us can do." Movement caught their attention. Isaiah riding in fast, too fast for casual return. He dismounted in a hurry, ran to the porch. "Father, Ma, there's trouble in town. Some men from back east buying up land, trying to force out the Apache families near Camp Verde. Marshal Thornton asked if you'd come, said your voice carries weight." Zeke stood immediately. "How many men?" "6, maybe 8, rich types. Think money makes them right." "It doesn't. Let's go remind them." Aida grabbed her shawl. "I'm coming too." "Aida, it might be dangerous. Then you'll need someone who speaks Apache, who can translate not just words but meanings." "I'm coming." They rode together, the three of them, reaching Camp Verde as the sun touched the western mountains. A crowd had gathered in front of the courthouse. On one side, Apache families, maybe 20 people. On the other, white men in expensive suits flanked by hired guns. At the center, Marshal Thornton looked exhausted and overwhelmed. "Folks, let's keep this civil. Mr. Peterson here represents a land development company. He's made legal offers for several properties." "Legal theft, you mean?" An Apache man stepped forward. Aida recognized him from the trial 2 years ago, one of the scouts who'd testified. "These papers say we don't own land we've lived on for generations. Say we got no claim because we're Indian." Peterson, a slick man with oiled hair and cold eyes, smiled condescendingly. "The law is clear. Indians can't hold property without explicit territorial grant. These lands revert to public domain, which we've legally purchased." "That's not entirely accurate." Zeke's voice cut through the argument. The crowd parted as he walked forward, Aida and Isaiah behind him. "And who are you?" Peterson asked. "Ezekiel Hartwell. I own the Hartwell and Brennan Trading Company. My wife is Apache. These people are our neighbors." "Then perhaps you should educate your wife's people on the concept of property rights under American law." The condescension dripped like poison. Aida felt rage rise but kept her face calm. She'd learned that anger was most effective when controlled. Zeke didn't rise to the bait either. "I'm familiar with property law. The Homestead Act of 1862 allows any person, including Indians, to claim land they've improved and lived on for 5 years. Several of these families meet that requirement. Not without documentation. Without papers, they're squatters." "Then we'll get papers." Aida stepped forward, speaking for the first time. "We'll file proper claims. Register every family. Create documentation that even lawyers can't dispute." Peterson's smile faltered. He hadn't expected organized resistance. "Mrs. Hartwell, I presume, the Apache woman who won her property through technicality?" "I won my property through law, same law you're claiming to represent, and I'll help every family here do the same." Eliza Whitmore pushed through the crowd. "I'll help too. I can read, write, and file legal documents. We'll do this properly, by the book." Doc Finch joined them. "Count me in. These families have been my patients for years. I can testify to their continuous residence." Abigail Porter appeared, carrying ledgers. "I've got purchase records going back a decade. Proof these families have been buying supplies, paying bills, living as legitimate residents." Peterson's face darkened. "This is outrageous. You people are interfering with legitimate business." "No." Marshal Thornton stepped forward, finally finding his spine. "They're exercising their legal rights, and I'm inclined to hear them out. Mr. Peterson, unless you can prove these families haven't met homestead requirements, I suggest you take your offers elsewhere." "This isn't over." Peterson's voice went cold. My employers have resources, connections. We'll fight this through every court in the territory. Then we'll fight back. Zeke's voice was steel wrapped in calm. Through every court, every filing, every legal avenue. And we'll win, because we're not doing anything wrong. We're just helping people claim what's rightfully theirs. Peterson and his men left, fury radiating from them like heat. The crowd erupted in cheers. The Apache families surrounded Zeke and Aita, thanking them in a mix of English and native tongue. Red Sky Walker appeared from the back of the crowd. The old man looked even more ancient than before, weathered down to pure spirit, but his eyes remained sharp. He spoke in Apache. Aita translated for the crowd. He says this fight is not over, that men who worship money will always return, like wolves circling a camp, but he also says we have something they don't: unity, family beyond blood, the willingness to stand together. Red Sky Walker placed his hand on Aita's belly. She hadn't told anyone yet, hadn't been certain, but the old man knew. He says new life grows, new generation that will know both worlds from birth, that will never have to choose between Apache and white, but can be both fully. This child will be bridge, will be hope. Aita's hand went to her stomach. Zeke's eyes widened as understanding hit. You're pregnant? I wasn't sure, but yes. 3 months, maybe. Zeke's face transformed, joy and wonder and something like terror all mixed together. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. He lifted her off her feet, spun her around despite the watching crowd, kissed her hard and deep. The crowd cheered again, this time for the new life promised, for hope continuing despite threats and challenges. That night, after the excitement had settled and the children had gone to bed, Aita and Zeke sat by the fire in their home. His hand rested on her stomach, feeling for movement still too early to detect. Scared? She asked. Terrified. I failed Morning Star and Little Fawn. What if I fail this child too? You won't. You're not the same man you were. Neither am I. We've learned. We've grown. We've built something that will protect this child in ways we couldn't protect the ones before. Boy or girl, do you think? Red Sky Walker says girl. I trust his knowing. Zeke smiled. A daughter. Our daughter. Not replacing Little Fawn, but honoring her memory by raising another child with love she would have known. What should we name her? They talked long into the night, blending names from both traditions, finally settling on Hope. Simple, universal, perfect. Hope Hartwell, Aita tested the name. Hope Morning Star Hartwell, using your first wife's name as middle name, connecting past and future. You'd do that? Honor her that way? She's part of your story, part of what made you the man I love. Our daughter should know that love doesn't die. It transforms. It continues through those who come after. Months passed. Winter arrived again, but this time without terror. The cabin was warm, food was plentiful, and the family gathered each evening to share stories and plans. Isaiah had started courting Eliza's niece, a quiet girl with a gift for mathematics. Nolan had received acceptance letters from 3 medical schools back east, all offering partial scholarships thanks to Doc Finch's relentless campaigning. Kai, now 10, had discovered a talent for woodworking, creating furniture that was both beautiful and functional. The younger children thrived, growing tall and strong and confident, and Aita's belly grew round with new life. On a night in late February of 1879, just over 2 years after Zeke had found them in the blizzard, labor began. Doc Finch and Nayland attended, the old man guiding his apprentice through her first delivery. Zeke paced outside like a caged bear, Isaiah keeping him company. She'll be fine, Father. Ma's strong. I know, but I'm allowed to worry. You love her that much? More than breath, more than life. If something happens to her, I don't know what I'll do. Isaiah gripped his shoulder. Nothing will happen. She's survived worse than childbirth. She's the strongest woman either of us knows. Hours passed. Then, as dawn broke over Mogollon Rim, a baby's cry split the morning. Strong, healthy, furious at being pulled from warm darkness into cold light. Doc Finch opened the door, smiling. "You have a daughter. Both mother and baby are perfect." Zeke nearly ran over the old man getting inside. Aida lay propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle. The baby had stopped crying, was looking around with dark eyes that somehow seemed to see everything. "Meet Hope," Aida said softly. Zeke knelt beside the bed, one finger extended. The baby grasped it with surprising strength. In that moment, looking at his wife and daughter, Zeke felt something settle in his chest. Completion, redemption, the sense that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally gotten it right. "She's perfect. She's ours." The 6 older children crowded in, eager to meet their new sister. Even Isaiah, now almost a man, softened at the sight of the infant. "Welcome to the family, Hope," he whispered. "You're going to love it here." And outside, as if the universe itself was celebrating, the sun broke through clouds that had threatened snow, bathing the Mogollon Rim in gold light that promised spring was coming, winter was ending, and life, stubborn and beautiful, continued its eternal dance. Red Skywalker stood on the ridge above the house, leaning on his walking stick, watching smoke rise from the chimney. He smiled, knowing his work here was done. This family would continue. This bridge between worlds would stand. He turned and walked into the forest, his form fading like morning mist, leaving behind only his blessing and the certainty that some stories, the important ones, never truly end. They just transform into new beginnings. 5 years passed like water flowing over stone, shaping everything it touched. The Hartwell and Brennan Trading Company had expanded twice, now employing 15 people of various backgrounds. The little settlement that had grown up around it had a name now. Hartwell Junction, a place where 3 trails met and different peoples traded not just goods but ideas, cultures, futures. Isaiah was 20 years old, married to Eliza's niece Catherine, with a child of their own on the way. He ran the northern trap lines with the skill his father Thomas had possessed and the wisdom Zeke had taught him. He moved between white and Apache communities with ease, speaking both languages, honoring both traditions, proving that a man could be complete without choosing sides. Nolan had graduated from medical school in Philadelphia, the first Apache woman to do so. She'd returned home not because she had to, but because she chose to. The territory needed doctors who understood both worlds, who could treat a rancher's gunshot wound and an Apache elder's spirit sickness with equal competence. At 18, she was already legendary, her waiting room always full, her reputation spanning 3 territories. Kai, now 15, had become a master craftsman. His furniture appeared in homes throughout Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. Simple, beautiful pieces that blended Apache and frontier design into something uniquely American. He'd just received a commission from the territorial governor himself. The younger children had grown too. Siki was 13, attending Eliza's school and already reading at a level that surpassed most adults. The twins, now 11, were inseparable still, working together in the trading post with a coordination that sometimes seemed telepathic. Baby Alo, who wasn't a baby anymore at 8 years old, could track game better than men twice his age and spoke 4 languages fluently. And Hope. Little Hope Morning Star. Hartwell was 5 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's fearlessness. She followed Zeke everywhere, a constant shadow who asked 10,000 questions and remembered every answer. She could name every plant on the mountainside, every animal track in the forest, every star in the night sky. But time carved its marks on everyone. Zeke's beard had gone gray, more silver than black now. His movements were still strong but slower, the accumulated injuries of a hard life making themselves known. At 42 he was no longer a young man, though his spirit remained unbroken. Aida, at 35, had lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and worry in equal measure. She still moved with Apache grace, still knew healing better than anyone except Nalin, still was the heart around which the entire community orbited. One spring morning in 1883, Zeke stood on the ridge where Red Sky Walker had stood years before, looking down at everything they'd built. The trading post, the houses, the school, the church that shared space with Apache ceremony grounds. A community that shouldn't have worked according to every social norm, but did anyway. Aida found him there, as she often did when he was thinking too much. "You're brooding again." "Reflecting. There's a difference." She slipped her hand into his, comfortable with silence, with presence that needed no words. Below, they could see Hope playing with the Cooper children, their laughter rising like music. "Do you ever regret it?" Zeke asked. "Taking me in? Binding your life to mine?" "Every day." She felt him stiffen, turned to face him with a smile. "I regret that I didn't find you sooner, that we lost years we could have had together. But regret taking you in, marrying you, building this life? Never. Not for 1 second. Even with everything that came after? The fights with land developers, the threats, the constant battle to prove we deserve to exist? Especially because of those things, because we fought together, because we won more than we lost, because we built something that matters." She placed his hand on her stomach. Beneath it, new life stirred. Their 8th child, conceived late in life but no less welcomed. "We're still building, Ezekiel, still fighting, still proving that love is stronger than hate, that family transcends bloodlines, that there's room in this territory for everyone willing to work together. Another baby, at my age, at our age, and yes, life continues, as it should." A rider approached from the south, moving fast. Zeke's hand went instinctively to his hip, but he'd stopped wearing a gun years ago. Isaiah handled security now, and the younger man rode out to intercept the visitor. After a brief conversation, Isaiah waved that all was well. The rider was allowed to approach. As he drew closer, Zeke recognized the uniform. United States Marshal. But not Thornton, who'd retired 2 years back. Someone new. The marshal dismounted, young but with hard eyes that had seen things. "Looking for Ezekiel Hartwell." "You found him." "Marshal James Dalton. I'm investigating the murder of Caleb Brennan." The name hit like a stone. Caleb. Aida's hand tightened on Zeke's. "Caleb's dead?" "Found stabbed in a Denver alley 3 weeks ago. Before he died, he gave a statement accusing you of threatening him. Said if he ever turned up dead, you'd be responsible." Zeke felt ice slide down his spine. "I haven't seen Caleb Brennan in 7 years. Not since he was convicted of fraud and attempted murder. I assumed he was still in territorial prison. Released 6 months ago. Served 7 years of a 15-year sentence. Good behavior." Dalton's tone suggested he didn't believe in good behavior. "Came west immediately. Started asking questions about you and your family. Then turned up dead." "And you think I killed him?" "I think you had motive. Man tried to steal your wife's land, kidnap her children, threatened to burn your home. If he showed up here looking for revenge, you'd have reason to defend yourself." "Marshal Dalton." Aida stepped forward, voice steady despite the fear Zeke could feel trembling through her. "My husband hasn't left this property in 3 months, except to check trap lines within 10 miles. He certainly hasn't been to Denver. Can anyone verify that?" "The entire community can verify it." Isaiah appeared, flanked by Doc Finch and a dozen others who'd gathered at the commotion. "My father hasn't gone anywhere. He's been here, working, building, living peacefully." Dalton looked at the growing crowd, all ready to testify, all protective of this family that had become central to Hartwell Junction. "Seems Caleb Brennan made enemies in Denver too. Gambling debts, accusations of cheating, the kind of man who generates suspects wherever he goes." The marshal's expression softened slightly. "I had to check. His statement named you specifically, but I've seen enough to know he was lying, probably setting up false accusations in case his past caught up with him. So we're clear? You're clear. Case will stay open, but you're not a suspect. Dalton remounted his horse. Mr. Hartwell, Mrs. Hartwell, I've heard stories about this place, about what you've built. Didn't believe them until I saw it myself. He looked around at the mixed community, Apache and white working side by side. Maybe there's hope for this territory after all. People like you prove it's possible. He rode away, taking with him the ghost of Caleb Brennan, that final threat from the past, now buried with the man himself. Aida sagged against Zeke. I thought for a moment they'd take you away, that after everything we'd lose each other to something that happened years ago. I'm not going anywhere, not until the mountains themselves crumble. That evening, the entire family gathered for dinner in the big house they'd built together. 3 generations now. Isaiah and Catherine with their infant son, named Thomas after his grandfather. Nolan, unmarried but content, too busy healing to worry about romance. Kai and his apprentice, a Navajo boy learning the craft. The younger children growing so fast it seemed impossible. And Hope, bright and curious, asking questions about everything. Papa, what made you help Mama that day in the snow? The question silenced the table. Everyone looked at Zeke, this question they'd all wondered but never quite asked directly. Zeke set down his fork, looking at his youngest daughter. You really want to know? Yes, teacher says you're a hero, but you just say you did what needed doing. I want to understand. He glanced at Aida, who nodded encouragement. Tell them, tell the truth. I'd been alone for 5 years after Morning Star and Little Fawn died. Living but not alive, you understand? Going through motions, waiting, really, for death to take me too. He paused, gathering thoughts. Then I heard crying in a blizzard. Found your mother and her 6 children, freezing, desperate, about to die. And something in me woke up, something that had been sleeping since Morning Star passed. What? Purpose. The understanding that I was still here for a reason. That maybe, just maybe, I'd survived when they didn't so I could save someone else, so their deaths wouldn't be meaningless. Hope's eyes were wide. So Mama and us, we gave you purpose? You gave me life. Real life, not just breathing. You showed me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. About standing beside people when the world tells you to walk away. About building something that lasts beyond yourself. Isaiah spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. You gave us the same thing, Father. After Pa died, after Uncle Caleb destroyed everything, we were lost. You didn't just shelter us. You showed us how to be strong without being hard, how to love without fear, how to build instead of just survive. Nolan added, you taught me that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about seeing people as whole beings, treating Apache grandmother and white rancher with equal respect and care. Kai said, you taught me that beauty comes from blending traditions, not choosing between them. Each child spoke, each adding their understanding of what Zeke and Aida had built. Not just a family, a philosophy, a way of living that rejected division in favor of unity. When they finished, Zeke had tears in his eyes, this bear of a man reduced to emotion by the children he'd raised. I don't deserve this much grace. Yes, you do. Aida's hand found his. You earned it. Every day, every choice, every moment you chose love over fear, unity over division, hope over despair. Later, after the children had scattered to their own homes or rooms, Zeke and Aida sat on their porch. The same porch where he'd first kissed her, where he'd proposed, where they'd made 10,000 decisions about building a life together. We're getting old, Zeke said. Speak for yourself. I'm in my prime. He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. You are. You're beautiful as the day I found you in that snow. Liar. I'm heavier, grayer, more wrinkled. More beautiful, because I see everything we've survived together. Every line on your face is a story. Every gray hair is a battle won. You're not just beautiful, you're magnificent." She leaned against him, feeling his solidity, his warmth, his absolute reliability after all these years. "Ezekiel, when we're gone, what do you want people to remember?" "About us? I don't know. That we tried, I suppose. That we didn't let the world's divisions become our divisions. That we chose love when hate was easier. I want them to remember that nobody is unwanted. That somewhere there's a place where you belong. Sometimes you just have to survive long enough to find it." A wagon appeared on the trail, moving slowly. As it drew closer, they could see it carried a family. Again. Always again. Hartwell Junction had become known throughout 3 territories as the place that didn't turn people away. The place where mixed families, outcasts, people who didn't fit elsewhere, could find acceptance. The family pulled to a stop in the yard. A woman, alone this time with 3 children. No husband, face bruised, eyes haunted but determined. "Is this Hartwell Junction?" "It is." "I heard tell this was a place where people don't ask too many questions, where a woman can start over." Aida stood, recognition flooding through her. Not this specific woman, but the archetype, the survivor, the mother protecting her children from something terrible. "You're safe here, all of you. Let's get you settled." The woman's face crumbled. "Just like that? You don't want to know what I'm running from? What I did?" "Did you hurt your children?" "Never. I'd die first." "Then we know enough. The rest is your story to tell when you're ready. Or never. Either way, you're welcome here." As Aida led the family inside, Zeke remained on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. 7 years since that blizzard. 7 years of building, fighting, loving, surviving. And it would continue. Long after he and Aida were gone, Hartwell Junction would remain, a place where the question wasn't where you came from, but where you were going. Where family meant those who stood beside you in storms. Where home wasn't a location but a feeling of belonging. He thought of Siki's question 7 years ago. Why doesn't anybody want us? The answer he knew now was that they'd always been wanted. They just hadn't found their people yet. Hadn't found the place where different was celebrated instead of condemned. Hadn't found the community willing to fight for them instead of against them. Hope appeared beside him, silent as an Apache scout. "Papa, why do we keep taking in strangers?" "Because we were strangers once, and someone took us in." "Will we always do it? Even when you and Mama are gone?" "That's up to your generation. But I hope so. I hope Hartwell Junction always stands for the idea that there's room for everyone willing to work, to contribute, to see others as human beings instead of threats. I'll make sure of it. I promise." Zeke pulled his youngest daughter close. "I know you will, little bird. You and your brothers and sisters. You'll carry this forward. Make it stronger. Prove that your mother and I didn't build this for ourselves. We built it for everyone who comes after." Inside, Aida was settling the new family, her voice gentle and sure. The sound of children's laughter mixed with adult conversation, smell of coffee and fresh bread, the ordinary miracles of daily life. This was legacy, not land or money or monuments, but the continuation of compassion, the insistence that everyone deserved a chance, the stubborn belief that love, given freely, multiplied instead of diminished. The Mogollon Rim stood eternal against the darkening sky, having witnessed this story and 10,000 others. These mountains had seen empires rise and fall, peoples come and go, boundaries drawn and redrawn. None of it mattered to the mountains. They simply endured, patient and immortal. But they remembered. The mountains always remembered. And they would remember this. A mountain man and an Apache widow who chose each other when the world said they shouldn't, who built a family from broken pieces, who created a community that welcomed instead of excluded. And when travelers passed through Hartwell Junction in years to come, they'd hear the story. How a blizzard brought 7 desperate people to a cabin. How a man chose kindness over isolation. How a woman chose trust over fear. How together they proved that family is what you make it, that home is where you're accepted, and that sometimes the people who find you in your darkest moment become the light that guides you home. The story would grow in the telling, as all good stories do. Details would change, but the heart would remain true. Because some truths transcend facts. We are all, in the end, looking for home. For people who see us completely and love us anyway. For a place where we can rest without armor, laugh without guard, exist without apology. And sometimes, if we're lucky enough and brave enough and stubborn enough to keep going when everything says stop, we find it, in a cabin on a mountainside, in the arms of someone who chose us when no one else would, in the faces of children who call us family, not because they must, but because they want to. That's the legacy. That's what survives when everything else fades. Love, choice, home, and the certainty that no matter how dark the storm, somewhere, someone is keeping a light burning in the window, waiting for those who need shelter to find their way home. The end. But also, always, just another beginning.